Hi everyone, this is my Module 9 discussion video. So the first question I selected was, select the top 3 pieces of advice offered and the top 3 worst pieces of advice offered by Chapter 13. Use the text to explain itself and offer your advice, justified from your personal and professional experience to support your explanation. Be certain to provide context and examples for what makes the advice good and bad. So, for me, the 3 worst pieces of advice. The first one was bring a handkerchief or tissue with you so that you can wipe your brow or dab your lip. I feel like, depending on the presentation context and where you're presenting, bringing a handkerchief to wipe your brow and actually doing that would draw more attention to the fact that you're sweating rather than just letting it be. Again, that depends on where you are presenting. If you're presenting in a big lecture hall, people aren't really going to be noticing if you're sweating, so if you grab a handkerchief and try to wipe the sweat away, people will notice that you were sweating. If you're in a small classroom, that's different. In that case, it's probably fine, but to me, it would just draw more attention to it. Second worst was hand gestures add visual interest to the speaker and a more dynamic delivery style. Not that this is a bad piece of advice, because if it's used effectively, it works, but a lot of the time, some people tend to use it overly, like hand gestures, more than they need to, and it distracts. So for me, I have trouble paying attention to presentations, so seeing somebody use their hands and gesturing a lot excessively really distracts me from the presentation that I'm supposed to be listening to. And the third worst, squishing yourself behind a podium or in a corner to put the PowerPoint slides center stage is the worst thing you can do to yourself. I don't think it's the worst thing, first of all. There are definitely a lot worse things you could do in a presentation. But sometimes presentations call for the PowerPoint slides being the center of attention. For example, I gave a presentation in my photography class, spring quarter last year, and the whole focus of the presentation was the PowerPoint, because there were images from these photographers that needed to be up there. So for me to stand in the corner behind the podium was the best way to bring the focus to the presentation. Again, that all of this is dependent on where you're presenting, how you're presenting, what you're presenting. It's all very context-based. Top best for me, it's not really advice, but it was kind of a nice thing to clarify. A little blushing will not be noticed by the audience and is irrelevant to the way people perceive your presentation. I blush a lot. I have rosacea, so I can't help it, and sometimes it's very excessive. So it's nice to know that a little bit of blushing isn't really noticed. Yes, they're going to notice if your face turns bright red, which it happens to me a lot, but it's not as prominent as you may fear it is. Second, make your clothing work for you. For example, try not to wear loud bracelets or something that will cause more sweating than normal. I think this is really important. If somebody is wearing a bunch of bangles on their wrist and they're all clinking together all the time while they're presenting, especially using hand gestures, it's going to distract the entire audience, not just the people that have trouble paying attention like me. It's going to cause people to pay attention to your bracelets more than the information you're trying to present. I used to wear bangles a lot in high school, and I would make sure I didn't wear them when taking a test because the room would be too quiet. So why would we want to wear it when we're presenting and we're the center of attention? And then finally, a monotone speaking style will ruin even the best presentation. I completely agree with this. I do my best to avoid speaking in a monotone style. I learned at a pretty young age that monotone is boring and it's hard to pay attention to. So honing that skill early on in life has really helped me in presentations nowadays. And I really think that it can ruin a presentation if somebody is just talking in a very similar tone voice. It gets very boring. So the second question I chose was, what are the benefits and drawbacks of outlining your speech? If you've outlined a presentation, for example one of these videos, and have also presented with an outline or notes, without an outline or notes, talk about the differences between presenting with and without notes. What do you believe is more effective? Why? And how does it fit with the text? So I think the benefits of outlining a speech is it increases conversational quality, and you're designing a presentation instead of writing one. So when giving a presentation, you really want it to sound like you're having a conversation, so it doesn't sound like you are just word vomiting information to the audience. It can get really hard to listen to if that's how your presentation sounds. So increasing conversational quality is really important. And I feel like with these videos, it's easy to kind of have the conversational quality if you just outline, because you're not talking face to face to somebody or presenting live to somebody. It's nice that we can, stop the recording and regroup and then continue, or edit it later on. So some of the drawbacks would be speakers tend to commit the entire presentation to memory and end up presenting with a monotone style of voice, like I talked about just a minute ago. Monotone can be very boring and hard to listen to, so trying to memorize the entire presentation will tend to make you sound like that because you're just trying to recall information. Also, outlining a presentation requires more practice because you don't have all the information right in front of you. For example, currently I'm trying out using an outline for my video instead of writing it all out, and it seems to be working pretty good. I do have to say that. But it did require a bit more practice before I started recording. One example of this is definitely these videos. Before, I used to just write out the answers to my questions on a Word document, and they would be behind the thumbnail of the video. And I had a hard time making sure I looked up at the camera and stopped reading my script, what I had written down. So now that I'm doing an outline, I seem to be talking a bit more and elaborating a bit more, which is definitely helping the quality of the videos, I hope. I think it's definitely more effective to present with an outline because you know your talking points, but you're not reading straight from the script. You're able to make eye contact with the audience, you're able to maintain conversational quality, and it just makes for an overall better presentation. Definitely fits with the text. I feel like the text maybe should have discussed outlining a bit more than it did. It didn't really talk too much about it, but I know from experience that outlining works. There's just sometimes where I forget to do it or don't have time, which isn't really an excuse. But anyway, that's all I've got, so thanks for listening.